project-based surveys. Some of us have done the UNICEF projects, the FinCap from Save the Children Australia, and some of us took part in some reviews. Now it's CSO standards for efficiency, effectiveness. CSO standards for effectiveness we have shared amongst us. Some of us have gone through, we have shared our stories from the different works that we do. And we use the 5 I's: information, inquiry, involvement, and identity, and invest. And also for evidence-based policy advocacy, we also shared the stories amongst us. And now I ask Maternity Kina if you have something to share, and we will share our stories. Okay, I'll go first. For me, I will share about my scoping when I went to Moturiki. From my experience, I can use these 5 I's. I use them all because I took my relations to get information. I took my relations, I went into the community, and I got information. And while doing that, I got in touch back with my identity. Who am I? To the people that I used to know. I got deeper into the system, the structure, where I place myself into the community. And from that, there was inquiry. I asked around. I got people involved in the scoping, and then involvement happened, and also invest. I got the information back. Now I know I can help. I can help the community better with all the data and the information that I got back. And I know that Miss Vatanasingatu from the back there, she knows what I'm talking about because she has some projects going on. Scaling up, man, I'm presenting alone. Man, you guys come up. And some positive feedbacks. Of course, in conducting capacity sessions, that is in relations to doing workshops. Of course, it's been doing a lot of that to inform the communities. And the negative side is data needs to be utilized to inform our direction. Data isn't reflected in government reports. And scaling up, there should be more trainings. So to involve the communities, the more trainings that the work we do with a principle like the Busan, like I did not hear Busan, so I'm asking Mr. Chasaya to translate it to me in Fijian. And the reports, trainings, modules that are user-friendly. For example, when I went to Moturiki, there was this church building, half the roof gone, and then they were complaining. All other churches, they were repaired, but our church, we kept complaining, but there was no repairing. And I said, and where do you go to when the hurricane comes? They said, to the church. Well, then did you inform them that this was the evacuation? Said, no, we just told them that this is the church and we need to repair it. Some kind of, something like that. We need to inform them. If you tell them that this was an evacuation center, then they can do something about it, because they live in the village. They don't know how how some technical things goes like that. I think that's all from us. Wait. Something else from here. Oh, the scaling. I will ask a madam to come up to explain about these values, stories, and the values we feel with something. Madam, come up. She's sitting pretty here. I will become my I will ask my madam.
But yeah, I think just going back to what Vani was sharing with us on the approach that we make, the approach of CSOs when it comes to picking up all these issues. We were talking about being neutral, right? But for us, yes, we cannot be neutral. Yeah? That approach is where our values come in. We tie it back to our work. And because at the end of the day, why we do what we do is for the common good. It's for the well-being of the community, and that's why that drives us. That drives us. That's why when we go into these spaces, money will not dictate to us what we talk about, but this is, is the center of what drives what we do. Why we do what we do. Yeah, I guess that's what I meant. What we meant here in this how we align ourselves. Yeah, with scaling up, I think just continue to share more about it. It's what we were saying is the training is to develop our language, because we are so down here, we work with the communities. Now when we come and discuss our experiences, they know the terms, because they have a seat at the table, and then they take all these, categorize it. But I think if we have more trainings like this, we sell some technical, so we can access funds and all these things. Yeah, that's what we meant by comms, developing comms. And this one, visioning together. I was just sharing with the group. This is the first time I'm seeing vision for Fiji. Fiji that we want to see in 2030. And I realized the strategic plan is just, things like that. When we do what we do, even today, after the session, for me, I'm thinking from our organization, I can go back and, align all this work to that, because we're looking ahead into what we've heard this morning. More envisioning workshops like this, where we would be able to, guide our work, align our work to that, so that we can be. I think that's about it.
Any questions to the group? Questions to the group? Or maybe we can reserve it and we have that process later. Yeah, Bella, can you put that up? Thank you, Ted. Over to you.
Thank you, Ted. Over to you.
Naka, just like the previous group that presented, we did took part in all the activities that were asked in the morning. People's research, evidence-based research, project-based, those are the activities that most of the D courses have participated in it. And on the next question we have is the positive and the negative sides. One of it is we build good relationships with the community, networking, especially with government agencies, DO, and HODs, Turali Koro, Maternity Kina, in our own districts, Petakina community, in the Vikurkoro. And then with the faith-based organization, Veli Talatala, and then another positive effect of it, it's getting to know your community better. Once you go out in the community, you get to meet the people, you get to know them and the struggles and the hardship they go through every day. And then in terms of assistance on needs-based approach, once you know your community, you know what assistance or needs that is required by that particular community. And then alternative channel.
So just on alternative channel, we were discussing about how we have a Turang Koro to the Matanikina. And one thing that Tima and Timika shared was that, sometimes it took some time for information to come back. But when they came to DCOS, it was more of like a system that fast-tracked some of the discussion to reach DO's office. And Nandi DCOS sharing was on how the Turang Koros were member of the DCOS and how how it helped the Turang Koro to get the information and the maternity to get the information to the DO's office as well. So it was recognizing this alternative channel and also providing another channel in which the community can get their feedback to the government agencies, and not only that, but also to development partner or NGO like Below. They were going through the deck to get their water, and then for some time it was not successful, and then Piango comes in, and then that's when now they last week they commissioned their water tank. So those are the alternative channel which came out of being the positive. And just to share about why I share about Below, discussion was that Below in the first budget submission we have. When we asked for water in Landi, Below was one of the community that brought that up, that they want access to safe drinking water. And because when working on the government, the other alternative channel that they've identified with that. So that is on the positive. On the challenges, information fatigue. Most of the time, the community are visited by so many to come and collect information. And Timo was sharing that sometimes when they come to some of the communities, they close their doors at them. They said, like, well, we don't want to give you any more information. We are tired of giving you information. And right now, we do not know where those informations have gone to, the lack of feedback to the community. You come and collect information, and then where have you taken our information to? Laos sharing about Below again, about one of the organizations that came a few years ago, collect information. They're still waiting on them, and Piango came to the rescue with the feedback back to the community. Sometimes the community just want to know whether it is successful or it's going to take some time. They just need us to come back and tell them. Because we're not coming back. By the time Tima come and knock on the door, they said, no, sorry, no more interview this time. And the second challenge they faced was territorial. Some of the focal points in the community are becoming to be a little bit more territorial now, asking what DCOS is, why are you coming, and what we thought is that maybe it's an insecurity of the Turang Koro. One of the response that were common from all this, like, are you trying to do my work? The comments from the Turang Koro. So our discussion was more like Catalano, and we're just speaking out. So one of the things why we got insecurity was, are you trying to do my work? And also from Ba, after the lockdown, how the Rocco was a little bit territorial in terms of why do we have to go directly to being when I'm here? So, and then the challenges, and then where comes up the scale up. How can we do better? One is the awareness of the structure. While we are providing gig courses and an alternative channel, I think our community needs more awareness of that, and also know how to demarcate where we are and where the government system is. And this was acknowledging that the government system is in place. We don't want to duplicate that, but where do we come in as civil society? By doing that, the empowerment of the focal points don't work against the core and maternity calendar, but how do we work together with them and empower them and support their work? And while we're supporting the focal points of how can we also better support our volunteers on the ground, sharing as well the experiences. Sometimes when they come to the community, they ask, where are you coming from? Can you show me an ID? And we were guilty because I was sitting there like, yes, that's right. Some of the recent activities we did, there were no ID for our volunteers. So, and then also training. Some of our volunteers, when they go into the community, they were well versed of the particular activity they were doing, but then not about the background or the bigger picture. So how can we do trainings for volunteers for them to see the bigger picture as well? So when they go into the community, so we're doing this because of this, and this. So how it interrelates with the other activities that we're doing, so that they do not, or information overload again. And PPE, some of the communities, there were kind of like shortage or late arrival of PPE in their work. So how can, this is actually for the Secretariat, how can we better support our volunteers on the ground when they're doing this work? Resource for community feedback, closing the feedback loop. We're talking about providing feedback loop. A better way for us to do that is, have equitable budget in activity that will allow us to go back to the community and to present to them, this is how we've used the information, or this is how your information that we've gathered have come back to you. And also regular DCOS and FCOS orientation, the need for us to go back to our DCOS and our community and talk about this is who we are, and this is how we fit into the picture, and this is how the community fit into the structure of DCOS and FCOS. And this was basically mostly for our members. Some of our members knows about DCOS, but very hard for them to relate what DCOS is in the community to FCOS and also to the government agencies and to other NGOs and stakeholders in the community. So those were a few of the discussions we have, and I'll leave it at that. If any questions, we have Timala, Milika, and Benina and Dimera to answer.
It looks pretty sitting at the bottom there. Can you fit that up big?
Before we start, we'll just ask Pat to come up with
Ice break.
ice break.
Let's stand up. Maka, está dando suggest Tama can move around. Just for 2 to 3 seconds. So we start with our presentation. Again, you have a seat again.
Anyways, when we initially had the write-up, we were supposed to do this as a team, but unfortunately, I'm going to be presenting. So, people's research, one of the things that came out strongly was when we go out into the communities, one of the biggest role that we play is one of the objectives to collect data. We want to make sure that the data that we collect is verified, also triangulated information, because this information translates to how you use it as a lobby tool at office level. We also talked about coordination. Most of the times when we go into the community, if we don't have that sort of coordination with our government arm and our partners on the ground in our communities, we find that that our work is not as effective and not successful. We're not able to get the information that we want, and our objectives are just not met. We also talked about mutual accountability in terms of our partnership. We want to be sure that when we're having conversations with our partners at the community level, we are understanding each other. You know, the objective is the same. You are able to ask me if, say for instance, $5, he takes $5 from me. I am able to ask him if he uses it, where is that $5? And the same thing applies to me. He's able to do that with me as well. We also talked about at the community level, once we're getting this data, we want to make sure that the data that is collected goes through these processes. And you know, we are very appreciative of the fact that the 5 I's came through: information, identity, inquiry, involvement, and invest. We talked about how we wanted all our community members to be participating when we're collecting the data. We want to make sure that everyone is included. We also want to make sure that the information received is well informed, even at the grassroots level. Also, one thing that came out strongly was the mapping. We want to make sure that we understand who, what, and why is doing what on the ground. This came out strongly in terms of the communities that we went through. The information that sometimes is a struggle to get information from our communities, because when we walk in, they would say stuff like, okay, that was, for example, Live and Learn, or Red Cross came through this way. They wanted the same data. What guarantee will you give me that the information that I give you will be for our benefit? So we wanted to make sure that, you know, when we're getting into these spaces, we know who's been here, what kind of information that they've gotten out from our communities, because we don't want to be going in and wasting their time. You know, like, they've given this amount of information already, why should I be wasting my time giving the same information to F course or D courses? In terms of the project-based surveys, we talked about COBO or combo. We want to make sure that, because one of the things that we faced while we were doing the UNICEF project in Kandau, in the remote islands, was the connectivity issues. And so we thought, you know, why don't we print out copies and take it when we're going through these spaces? But also, we were very mindful of the environment. This is one of the projects that we did to Science of Laughing in terms of greening the humanitarian system. We want to make sure that the kind of aid or the kind of work that we do is environmentally friendly. So one of the suggestions that PESA came up with was print out one paper, have a discussion at GD, and then just noting it down. This came out strongly too, the translation bit. We want to make sure that the translation bit is in Hindi and Itaukei. You want to add on that? Okay, carry on. Yes, we also spoke about innovative inputs. This spoke to specifically the trip to Kandavu for the UNICEF project. Some of our participants were little kids. You know, for little kids, if you have to speak to them for like 10 minutes, just giving them stuff to read, they'll get bored. So what we did, we had to come up with innovative ideas to actually get the answers that we wanted. So we had to draw on butcher papers. We used speedings and lollies. We were not bribing them, but just something to get them engaged. Yeah. Then we also talked about policies, safeguarding policies, child protection policies, something that we want to be sure to use when we're out there, because something that came out strongly from our discussion was the do no harm policy. We want to make sure that when we're out in the communities, we're safeguarding everyone's welfare. Also, we want to make sure that all our toolkits that we're using in the surveys are reviewed. We want to make sure that it's user-friendly as well. In terms of the CSO standards, the feedback loop, we thought to talk about this one because this one was a very important aspect of it. For us, it's like a cycle. And of course, all ties down to the money bit. We want to make sure that whatever information that we collect, that we provide back to the community informs our next steps, our approaches, and our plans. Obviously, money. Without money, we can't do any projects. And also, we want to make sure that it is our priorities, our community's priorities. We want to make sure that we want to own this process. In terms of evidence base, we've all been part of this process where we're sitting into workshops. We've also been part of the Citizen Budget Guide, collecting data and all of that. We want to make sure that the communities are at this table telling their own stories. We don't want anyone else to tell the stories. Get them to come and tell the stories themselves. And in terms of data, Pat had mentioned in terms of the data, Pat, do you want to explain that, please? So he talked about how two people would come in, even with the same information, with different interpretations of the same thing. Yeah? So that was the reason why we thought having the data centralized. We had talked about motoriki scoping from here in terms of collecting data. The report that we've gotten from here, we've linked it to the advocacy bit. This is where the intervention comes in. How does it come from here to here? This is where the money bit comes in, priority. Experiences, for positive, we stated that one of the things that came out strongly was it strengthened our capacity to engage, not only in terms of research, we talked about coordination as well, our partnership with the community members. We talked about how we assisted their personal growth, their capacity building, even the community growth. Consistent engagement has allowed them to be aware of who they've helped. But I think this one is very important, and I'd like you to just talk on this one.
Maka wana natikin nga katika na website na nauna madali kanya sa every time sa lelori itu na wera na ba mo sarando uki blue itu nga wera na baka ndoni kana ba taki yo logo tara pa neloto kada kilab na kani tao nga bale na ko sa dito kinawai sa gina kana washi kita ka chino dapat pa yan explain wira Loma dal touch ko dito, hindi lomang ko, chikin na mong tabuleni, wag ka na mong dali, nangonele mo kinaway, mo sa nabiso ka rakin, di talaga kita ko. Kung expected ito, kumain, nangonan na luho talaga, may tinarek ito talaga, may nalakta na may bibo kibig. So, ito sa touch ka, may bibo kibira, kota na sa food feeding, every time you bihira, sana, para tayo chikin na bingon na kailangan kinadala. Na.
Okay, so we moved on to the negative aspect of it, and of course, we have to explain this one on the stigma.
Nakabala stigma side, ninonggo, never kana we tumintik talaga ni kina, okay kina, nanong bulay niyo. Ano nila kinabla ko man ang bulan nito do, ito dala pa ni ba marandore mesa. Uli nga kwantong kakilyo, nalasong nga ito po ito tuminggo, nabigkat so ba. So na matagal yung bulo ba, ito nga may na community, kung dala ko yung kinapagpiliti man ito may, community man ang community, so ilo pa, community.
I think the next point is a misconception of aid provided. The majority of the time, this is something that really came out strongly. When the EFCOS team or the DCOS team would come in, they would just automatically, in their head, they would say, okay, these are from Red Cross, you know, instead of just singling the DCOS out. So for us, this just tells us that there's just a lot of the CSO coming into these spaces. Another thing was on traditional structure. This is in terms of coordination. How do we fit in when we're going into the community level? I really don't want to touch too much on that because we just had a spat at the back there about this one. But it talks about human rights, how Vani was talking about how it's very important to be mindful that whatever you're doing, you're actually respecting a self-worth of a person.
Nakamember ka nga na pagkakachka na pag nindo na poro, dado tinando ni Rucho ko matanga, dado tinando na big, sa na Bibang Castillo. Ngay yan na village Bailo, sa abang abitulan ni Koro, sa tukang mochulan ni Koro, sa resolve technique, sa round technique, ito sa nakirbi mo sa tina. So, another one, nung ready, fue para. Doon na ito siya, sa mga doon Kamu lebih malah takdirnya memang Bailo saya doon
So that was the fuss from the back there. We had a little bit of a spat. Some of us took the side that he did not need to go to jail because he would be rehabilitated within the community, and half of us were just telling him to go to jail. Anyways, in terms of the work at national level, I think from the community level to where we are right now, we just want to make sure that our current system is simplified, you know, especially with our toolkits, translation bits, and it's user-friendly in terms of coordination as well, to really knock out and review conversations that we're having about coordination and the lies. Because at the end of the day, when we are asking for funding, we want to make sure that it trickles down all the way to the community, because this is what we do. Community is our main, the work that we do is, you know, we're pro people. Yes, thank you.
Okay, can we hang it up somewhere and we'll just, you know, we went through this very quickly, so we have to credit the people who spoke first, and both at the back for helping to break down that information. You had two pieces of, you had two, Okay. Okay, good. All right. You will note that in the program we had, we've got three, well, at around 3:30, we were gonna go into, so we've got a bit of time. So the process that I thought we might be able to take at this time, perhaps before we go into that, I will leave some room for questions, If you have questions, right? So we've got 3 groups that have presented. One is on the other side, that's the first one, right? The first group, Nella's group, that group. The second one is on this one, CARES group, right? And this one is the group that has just presented. So if you have questions that you might have with regards to what they presented, maybe I'll open it for about 5 minutes before we go into the next session. Questions? The one thing I'm picking out is stigma. Some of us are going into communities and we're facing that kind of a challenge, where one is the information fatigue, second is stigma or the misconceptions that exist in communities. How do we tackle that? And then territoriality of the others who work in that area. Maybe I'll put that out there. Perhaps invite some discussions around that. Yes? All right. Anyone has an issue that they want to talk about with regards to what we've just heard? I know there's a lot of positives. We'll get to the positives after this, but I thought that maybe these are the issues, because we are constantly collecting data, we are interacting with communities. Territoriality, which is related to how sometimes you encounter very insecure, partners. Yeah. And then the other thing is around, trying to look at that. Okay, yes, sometimes the data isn't reflected in government. So also related to insecurity. And because you're the collector of the data or you're conducting the people's research, the stigma that sometimes comes, the misconceptions, how do we deal with that? It was like, okay, Tessa?
When they explained as cost is space, and there was some maybe it's us reaching out story and get an understanding of which this is, and we started announcing out some very easy or short explanations of what it is. Which comes from social services, in a big one, all in a number. It's a mouse, but we thought that we need to start speaking or seeing the same thing. We're trying to bring to like that, but they're confusing the people who want to go into. They have to introduce ourselves, who we are to the community.
I'm noting that down. Stepping up solution finding. So explaining clarity about who and what FCOS is, and then also means that we explain who FCOS is, explain who the national NGO affiliates are, what we do in the overall scheme of things in thinking, maybe how we're connected regionally or at the international level. That's one of the ways in which we can deal with perhaps that confusion at community level. How do we deal with insecure government or other partners who work in a particular area that you're working in? How do we deal with that? We have something to say, Musa. I'll come back, by the way. These people have just come back from that experience. They've just come back from trying to handle an issue like that. Do you have some ideas from your research? Next question.
Start with the same industry we just worked from here, trying to play this kind of game. So changing kind of there's a lot of partners and a lot of communities that are involved in this, and they themselves are confused on where they should be. Set ourselves a plan in different places, knowing exactly what we're going to do, and we are guided by the community, and we set a timeline. Fortunately, government has its own timeline as well, which is based on the coming election. You see a lot of government agencies are trying to cut something, but so a lot of times they try to push us to try and get us to fast track most of our so that we fall. So in relationships such as this, sometimes we need to put our foot down, but we also need to understand. You met me and Vani back in 2014. We would play cards and we were surrounded by dogs. We were taken twice to the police because we stood against. But in this kind of we know that sometimes we cannot do this with them. Sometimes we have to weigh our options in the way coming. I cannot be putting my hands up. Sometimes I need to do that once they go out the room, then I can do that. Because times doors and a lot of partnership that we need to have on the ground. We really need, especially in the targeting the same as well. So we do programs, we come back. Sometimes we also need to look at the capacity. Sometimes we are sensitized in all the things, and they don't one day follow orders and strict deadlines. A lot of times we have an opportunity in open door policy, then we can talk to one and everyone in terms of the system, make it from the grassroots. We can even tell one and the community what to do as well. That is the power we need to. With government, they don't have those kind of things. So sometimes. And if you work, sometimes when you're working on the ground with some of the ministries and stuff, yes, here is good. But try and work there, it's very good. There's something unique about working in CSO, especially here with Yango and in food, I think. In the last 3 years, I was very surprised when we put up one morning after the meeting. Sierra was sitting at food, cutting kasab. We've never seen the standards that goes to show that while a lot of us can engage, work with ministers, talk with kings, we never forget where our food actually lay. This should always be our thing that guides us. Talk about globalizations, and a lot of times I need to be reminded, and always share this. Don't forget reminded by what Ciale told us. system or you will get to guided by that. So a lot of times show them doesn't mean that you need to go and bring them to spaces, open up spaces. If they are not making spaces, if they're not opening up their spaces, then please create some space for them.
To answer some of our questions in a very indirect way. Yeah. One is the importance when we're talking with, we're working in a space like this. Insecurity permeating a lot of the relationships. One thing we have to do is we have to be ready to serve, you know. So a lot of the leadership demanded of us is servant type of leadership. Like he was quoting the example of, you know, if you're executive director, it should be talking from Kasar. Yeah. But a lot of that moves some of the leaders or some of the, I guess, the decision makers in the space that we're trying to influence. Yeah? So servant leadership. The other thing is about being very innovative about the spaces you create so that they can come into that space. That's what Usa talked about. Sometimes it's hard for them to converse or discuss here, so you create a different space. You can see we often have cover. Yeah, we invite people into that space, and that opened up a lot of. And I know that the Dick was trying to avoid looking at me because he likes to do that a lot, which is, you know, the cover sessions. Yeah? Because some people actually think I enjoy drinking cover. No, I don't. I have to do it because that's where people tend to open up, particularly those people. So it's about creating, you know, alternative spaces. And I have to remind you, our vision is, it also talks about the Bonua being a dialogic space. So space is in that vision. So we have to be creative around when we encounter spaces that are closed, we have to find other spaces where we can get them in. At least those are the two things that I picked up from there. The other bit is that we don't have the ideal space. Sometimes there's a give and take kind of relationship that is required, but we do it because of the communities we serve. It's not something that would be acceptable in other, perhaps CSO spaces, but because you're community leaders and you have often told us, you've got to do it, Bani, because that's what's going to make things happen for us at this level. So, you know, those are the things that we're learning at this time. At least those are the things I also from sharing. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about before we go into the next session? Because it's supposed to be 10 minutes long. It's another one. It requires that you any other questions? Okay.
No. Yes, Madam ED from Piang with mentioned about the Busan, and the other one is the Istanbul. For Busan, like the CSO or the small group that took the government of Samoa to court. Okay, for the Istanbul principles, it's in regards to our work with CSOs.
Yes, it's about us holding ourselves accountable.
Okay, who monitors that?
Right, this is a good conversation. Because if you look at your booklet, there's a bit in your booklet where there's, you can see names of, it's a good thing that Kasam Sawadee Cost Chairman is here. Welcome.
Because these groups were the ones that were on this piloted. Sorry, kind of jumbling up my words. So Istanbul Principles is the driving force behind some of the codes, CSO codes that are being done now. And tomorrow you'll hear a little bit more of the regional code that Piango is developing for all its members. Now, if you recall in 2018, those who were here in 2018, if you were here in 2018 at the Lotoka event? None? Oh, Tima, good. Okay, were you there too? Man. Okay, sorry. I seem to have lost a lot of members, but we, of course, passed a code of accountability, right? And the code of accountability, if you see the Observatorio, the code of accountability is directly related to the Istanbul Principles. Yeah? So if you have documents, this is what I'm referring to, is this one. So initially, before I came to, Piango has always, this is the work around Istanbul Principles here, the third one, the one I showed you. So straight after the Istanbul meeting and the principles came out, Piango, because Piango serves as the secretariat for CSO partnership, began to roll out this awareness to its members, to try and push for its members to have codes of CSO codes of minimum standards. At the Fiji level, FCOS had started to convene discussions with the CSO sector, both the members and the non-members. It was until 2018, and there was a task force that was set up, and they had not been able to pass a code. It was still in draft. It was only until 2018 that we came in, that we said, okay, a lot of this, it must start from within FCOS, because initially, the focus was on the greater CSO sector, and there was not enough agreement or consensus in the sector to pass a Fiji code. So what FCOS did was to start it within its membership. So it started with the DCOSs and the members at that time. And through the consultations, we were able to make it the code of accountability. The code in other members of Piango, some of them call it the CSO minimum standards. In other places, it could be the CSO code. But for us, because through the consultations, it was found that we needed to emphasize accountability, our own accountability. That's why it's called the FCOS Code of Accountability. It's not something we require those who are not our members to align with, but it's within us. So once we passed that, then in 2019, we came up with an assessment matrix. So it was very gradual that we came up with an assessment matrix, and we piloted that in Savu with a Savu DCOS. So the code can be applied at the group level. So for example, if you come from, there's Lami DCOS, but there's 40-something groups that are members of Lami DCOS. The assessment can be applied to the groups, can be applied to the DCOS, can be applied to the national NGO. So we had piloted it with Savu DCOS. We assessed Savu DCOS, then we assessed some of its members. We asked for volunteers. So you'll see in your booklet the result of that assessment. Very brief, because it took, at that time, they didn't, the understanding and the awareness of the code, which encapsulates how we are aligning with the Istanbul Principles. It was to assess whether we were on, those groups could be aligned. And we found that, yes, the code could be applied at those levels, and you could assess groups, small groups, based on that. So we had developed the code of accountability to be as simple as possible so that it can be applied at various levels. So if you look at it, Miliga, can you just show? Hi. Just show them what it looks like. That was the assessment in, so you'll see that there were about 4 groups in Savu. And it's very brief because at that time we were piloting. So we had piloted the Code of Accountability in 2018. And then 2019, in the middle of the year, we tried to do that assessment. End of the year, we reviewed the Code of Accountability again. And so it's almost like a work in progress. Right? But there have been some attempts to assess how we are aligning. But what I should warn you is this. When we started discussions around 2020 to 2021 to try and get consensus from the CSOs, the sector, on just a humanitarian code alone, it was impossible. It's still in draft. That code that we were proposing for humanitarian work. The appetite for the CSOs to align to anything is not there. And part of it is because the connection to communities and communities holding FCOS, holding other NGOs accountable, not yet there. Have I lost you? Yes, I lost you. No, sorry. Ako? Kandawu. If no, sorry, good. But if I lost you, Kandawu, then no good. Any questions on that? Okay, have I answered your question? Asking me as if you wasn't there in Lutoka. Right. The assessment? Right. Okay. I think I've got it in a presentation. So I thought I will give it to you little by little and not introduce too much to you. Tomorrow is the code day. So bring your thinking heads on because we're going to assess all the groups, the D courses. Yeah? Tomorrow you're going to do about 3 assessments. One is the code assessment, code of accountability. You have the opportunity to feedback to whether it's still, we need to review it or whatever. And then you have the regional code. You'll get a snapshot of what will be in the regional code. And then these people from Manila will come and talk to you about their own assessment. So this today is very slow because you people came on the well at 3 a.m. Oh, at 2 a.m. He must have just stood up from the fan. He forgot. Yeah, so we actually have a code of accountability. That's only for FCOS members. Right? And that's been passed by FCOS members in 2018. Yeah? We are waiting for the regional code to come out. Then we'll review our code of accountability so we align to the regional one. That's why it's been only reviewed in 2019 along with that assessment. And we haven't done any more changes because the work at the regional level has already started. We're waiting for that to complete, then we will start our code. But in the meantime, because one of the risk areas is humanitarian work, which you all have engaged in, we set up a code for that, a humanitarian code of conduct for CSOs, because we were seeing stories and reports from your committee observation reports. Okay, have I lost you? Question? Question? No? Do we want to dance to some music? Yes. Let's all confuse ourselves today and try and sort ourselves tomorrow, right? Just a quick reflections in terms of how this whole assessment works. It's not a popular exercise. Yeah? because you ask yourself a lot of hard questions. And for organizations like ourselves and FFOS, when you ask questions like, have you done your audit? Have you done your AGM? Yeah? And if you have not done it, you started to pick a fight rather than explaining why. And so this kind of exercise, you need to build the trust that those that you will be assessing, trust that you come from a safe space. Yeah? And that's why it's always good to start this kind of work internally and to get as many people within your system to participate so that they fully understand. Yeah? Because it's a confronting exercise. You ask a lot of questions, and you will also find that it comes a time when the power dynamics get into the way. And so it's we all want to have an accountable organization, institution. But then we don't like other people to come and assess us. Yeah? That's one. The other one is that we have a history of people assessing us and then use that assessment to kind of put you into a different, okay, because you have done this assessment, you have not passed, just like a test at school. You have not passed, so I can only give you $20. Yeah? It's been used by our, these are the development effectiveness component that comes into it, where we are saying, no, don't bring your dollar here attached to the assessment, because the whole assessment is to understand where we are, and we need to help you move from that stage to another level of where we would like to see ourselves in. And that's where probably the gray areas around how the development effectiveness need to build into that. In addition to what Bani said, with the Eastern Goal principle, the civil society saying, don't allow anyone to come and define who we are and what we need to do. We have to be accountable to ourselves first before we step up. Because we love holding our government accountable, because say, oh, this ministry are not doing this. And we often forget to reflect on ourselves, and then we find same thing we ask them to demand from them is the same thing that we struggle. So that's where the whole development effectiveness is going in circle. But really, it's a question about, do we really have to build ourselves as an accountable organization? So there are some other civil societies that may not like that exercise, maybe because they have some other reasons, but really, they may not like to see FCOS doing that exercise for them. And there's a lot of competitiveness in the civil society works. One of the reasons is just development effectiveness, because the way our donor are putting us in a competitive process of applying for funds, for example. Yeah? So it does not help when we are trying to bring people together in solidarity when the processes that are available for us to access funds is in a competitive process. So there's a lot of gray areas if you're confused. Yeah. It's good to be confused sometimes. Okay, we are almost at the time. And I thought maybe because the energy is a little bit low, we might try and wind up our conversation. But before you do go, this is intended for tomorrow. Because the questions have begun to really dovetail into that, I thought I might just give it to you so you have an idea of what the assessment is. And this assessment is being done at your level, from the group. So when the assessment is being done so FCOS will assess the DCOS. The DCOS will assess their groups. So the dream is that when you come to AGM, you'll be able to do this for FCOS as your organization, and we see whether we are aligning as FCOS. I don't want to make you think deeply about it because tomorrow is when we will really jump into the issues. Can you just distribute one per group so they can have an idea? Can I have a copy of your accountability? This is our code of accountability, which was passed in 2018. You'll see there hasn't been much edits or amendments to it, but at that time, there were only, and the presentation around this will be done tomorrow. So I'm not gonna bore you, so you have some time to relax for those of you who came very early. After this, we go to tea and perhaps off to sleep or whatever, but we'll have some cover by Alice. Have you prepared the cover for those who want to digest a little bit more? Yes? So you see, we have this process that we're supposed to do, which is around validating, verifying, and volunteering. I think the volunteering bit is already out the window because you're already doing the work, right? But now you see the bigger picture. You're contributing to only one part of a bigger observatorial framework. So when you're sending in your photos, when you're sending in your budget submissions, that's how we are processing that information internally. But when you look at the code of accountability, it's very simple. It's about 4 parts to the code of accountability: accountability basics, accountability governance or accountable governance, accountable programs, making sure that the programs that we design are suiting the needs of the members of your groups, and accountable resource management, which is about finance, human resources. Yeah, and that's what we're going to do a deep dive of tomorrow. Okay, I'm just gonna re-show the, I'm just gonna re-show the, I'm going to re-show you, if you can just look at that graph, that observatorial framework. Yeah, if you can just look at the observatorial framework, I know that you've given detailed feedback on each component and what needs to be improved. But I just want to go through each one and just hear from you whether this is working or not, whether there should be some reconfiguration to the framework as it stands. Yeah. And sometimes it doesn't happen like that in practice. I was trying to fit this, I was trying to find a graph that would suit how we do this, and that was the only graph. And Madam Celia was saying, that red snake looks really lovely. I said, man, it was the only framework that was there that I could use. But I just want to ask if you can just have a look at that. I'm just going to go through each component. Yeah. Maybe the bigger one. That one. Can you see this? Yes. So as it is, the People's Research Tools component, are you okay with where it is and how it's affected in this framework? Yes? No? Of course, there's some weaknesses, or we'll see to that. Would you see it happening elsewhere in the sort of the framework? Are we okay? Can I get an indication to say that where it's placed right now in our framework is working for you? Yes? I for yes and nay for no. Nay for no. Yes? Set? The project-based surveys and your participation in it and how it's placed in our framework? Okay? You agree with it? Benny is like staring at me. Yeah, okay, set. I know that the CSO standards of effectiveness is right there, right before we go to evidence-based. And placed it there for a particular reason, but if it's not, if you think that it shouldn't be there, it should be at the top or whatever else, can you let me know? It should be at the top. So we should move the standard CSO standards for effectiveness to the top. Do you have a reason for suggesting that? Right. Good feedback. Are you getting that, writers? Are you getting that? So the suggestion is to move the standards, CSO standards for effectiveness components to be the first, right? To be the first? To be the second? To be the second? Can I hear from others who agree or violently disagree? Mosi? The first one, to be the first one, that's another alternative. That's another alternative.
Evidence-based would be the third.
What would be the last?
CSO
I can't hear you.
Evidence-based policies. We only have those evidence if research on those things agrees that.
Yes.
And get those evidence to guide your policies and
Yeah.
policies.
Yes.
And in the end, you want a standard that guide
Okay, so that's another view. The view that Use is presenting is that for you to be able to do, I lost my train of thought. Usa, your suggestion is to move up the evidence-based policy advocacy to which? Third? Maybe the exercise that you have overgrown is to read, if you were to redesign this so that it works for you, is to actually come up with that design. Maybe the graph that I'm sharing might be confusing, but if you were to depict this, how would you put that in a graph, the flow, that it makes sense to you? Can we ask you to do that as a homework? Homework?
Yes.
Yeah?
This is how I read what
Here's one, she's already started with her homework.
this is what I'm reading from you're saying you're arranging the things, but for me, when I'm hearing you, you're kind of talking about the standard in the middle of it. And all these are your research tools and like this.
That's one.
Not my idea, the user's idea.
That's one. Okay, so can I ask that during tea and then from like 2:45, 3:45, you can then go on home. But as regard for tea, one more bullet or what do you call this? Butcher paper. If we can get the butcher paper to each group, and you just, if you were to amend this, what would it look like with those components?
But they're reasons.
And your reason. Come ready, yeah? Yes? Okay, we need some music. We need some music for tea. Thinking very deeply. Say, can you do an icebreaker, the one that makes people jump?
Can you tell?
Starts from what level?
Lie with the seat of the devil.
All right, let's stand up. Stand up, stand up. All right. You've done this before, bear with me. All right. Say this word, repeat it. Achikicha.
Achikicha.
With some adjective. Achikicha.
Achikicha.
All right. Now, when you say achikicha, I want you to do this. Achikicha.
Achikicha.
Right? When I say three, say Achikicha. Let's try. Three. Achikicha. All right. Ready? Palms together. Achikicha. Palms together. Elbows together. Three. Achikicha. Palms together. Elbows together. Heads up. Three. Achikicha. Palms together. Elbows together. Heads up. Knees bend. Three. Achikicha. Palms together. Elbows together. Heads up. Knees bend. Bum out. Achikicha. Palms together. Elbows together. Heads up. Knees bend. Bum out. Wait. Thumb out. Three.
I think that was a demonstration of the state right here. Thank you very much. I think he's ready, Roima. He's ready, and I'll just ask someone to pray over the team and also to pray to say goodbye to everyone who needs to go home today because we won't be coming back from tea. Yes, we all agree? Because I'm getting some really good, pleading faces like, end this already, like that. So I'm going to ask Mosi, can you come and pray and just also as our closing prayer for today, and just to thank everyone. It's a lot to take in.
Sulit yang belum masuk. Isu lima terlalu kima mau dibina kebikin kita kebiku. Oleh sini ketua kita bina kebikin kita sulit boleh kita. Kalau lebih kerat, boleh bina lom di loma, boleh bina lom di tibel, boleh bina lom di bawah. Sebab kita nak nak mula di kaki. Boleh bina lom di buku kita orang tua kita. Ibu bina tak kena kita seruat yang kita. Ibu mesti bisa bawa nama ini kaki koko. Tambah lagi kemudian anak kamu sama orang tak kita boleh bina bos bina tak. Kali boleh kita mau kiman, lebih kita rokok dengan baik. Boleh bina kita di tahu, boleh kita tipu nama ini di tiber. Boleh bina di tibeti, dan boleh di roti, dan boleh di bawah. Yang maru kiman, dan kita boleh start mai kiman tale. Tabi kita mengarawat kita nak lindi. Na loma ni mana ko na wale ko no ni loma kina no ni do romas ki mas no ni sisi ni lo ni loma la ki
Kapisa na wale ko nang sana no mai to wasu so madali na liste wale ko nang se
Makanan
kampoti please put your paper to the group, please. To the group, one per group. Next, Alice, when is the thing going to be ready? Four? 4:30 or 4? Oh, 4 p.m. 4 p.m.
Yes.
All right. See everyone.
You just like make a music group up. Yeah. Oh.
Kimchi. Saya. Tukani. Mulai stream kiri and pada mulai stream. And pada mulai stream.
Just number 4.